And I call this meeting to order at 5:06 p.m. I'm going to share my screen.
Little chicks. Oh.
Go away.
There's actually 4 of them.
They're so cute.
Was that allowed, Rashad?
This is an issue because my... Can I just get to the agenda? Okay. So I recognize that... Where is Cisco? This is such a mess. I recognize that Aaliyah's here, Joshua's here, Acha is here, Pooja is here, Rahman is here, as well as ex officio members Murshad, Zachary, Courtney, no, not Courtney, sorry about that, Tori, Candace, and some members of the undergraduate population. You can all see my screen, right?
The Retriever's here. Hi, Anjali.
Hi.
Hi, Retriever. All right, so has everyone had a chance to look over the agenda?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Move to approve the agenda for July 9th.
I second.
Are there any objections? Okay, so by general consent, the agenda is approved. Acha, did you get the minutes done?
No, I didn't. I was out all day today, so I wasn't able to really finish them, but they are started. So you can see
Okay.
in general, but it's not specific.
All right, well, it seems that I cannot look at these. I'm not entirely sure why.
I'll try to share with you personally.
Okay. Okay. Candace said to table them, so is there a motion to table?
I move to table the approval of the minutes from June 18th.
Second.
Are there any objections? All right, so by general consent, the minutes from June 19th, 2020 are being tabled. And now we can move on to the new business. And for the new business, we have discussion about fall allocations. Is there a motion to enter discussion?
Motion to enter discussion.
Second.
Are there any objections? All right, by general consent, we are entering discussion about fall allocations. I believe this is a discussion that can only be participated in by ex officio members and the representatives. Is that correct, Candace?
Anyone can participate in the discussion. You have to recognize them and then provide them with time allotments to speak. So, in a virtual space, my recommendation would be that if someone wants to make a comment about something, they should, I guess you could type a word or a phrase into the chat box so that you can have a running tally, and maybe Aaliyah can be the person to say, hey Sierra, the next person that is requesting time is so and so. They're watching Elf behind me, sorry. So yeah, but I guess the first thing maybe is to maybe provide some context around why and a discussion needs to be had.
Okay. So I will continue sharing my screen, but can you all see this email from Update on Fall and Spring Events? No?
I can.
Sorry, I'm only sharing Google Chrome. That's my bad. I'm not very versed in WebEx right now, so sorry about that. Okay, can we see it now?
Yes.
Okay. So Candace, a while back, forwarded this email to me. This is from Student Org Schedulers and coordinator of event scheduling at UMBC. And one thing I want to point out is that this sentence right here, we have additional details on the state of in-person events, and we will be removing all fall 2020 event requests from 25 Live and maintaining any spring 2021 event request in tentative status. For those of you who don't know what 25 Live is, that's just the organization. It's just like a booking app that clubs and orgs can use to request events and spaces on campus for them to use. So with this information, it is assumed that there will be absolutely no fall events in person, at least. And so I wanted to bring this to everyone's attention and to have a discussion on how we may proceed for fall 2020 with allocations and funding clubs and orgs. So does anyone have any, I guess, questions or concerns to begin with about this statement?
I have one question for everyone. And it's really just a point of like this being on the agenda, but you know, what will the process look like for us to go through? Like, are we just going to say to everybody that's in the budget, this won't be happening? It's completely slashed. Are we going to be identifying certain ones that will still be like offering something to, or like the possibility is still open for them to give or still have an event? And I know I spoke to Candace about this in our 101, but like, what will the process look like for student organizations that still want to request money from the finance board? How are we going to then transfer over what we know are the like approved budgets to what then could be opportunities for student organizations to still be active?
Candace, I saw you in the chat. Would you like to answer?
I mean, yeah, I think that's the question. I think the first part of what Joshua was saying was what I was gonna hone in on. It was like, so the university has canceled all of these student org events. The state of Maryland is not allowing for state dollars to be spent on out-of-state travel because of COVID. The rules and regulations and guidelines around who gets to host an event on campus really revolve around two things. One, is it mission critical? And two, can you do it virtually? And the I think that if because this is a blanket thing, right? It makes it, the weight of it is heavier. And when there have been other times when events have been canceled, maybe for a span of days because of a snowstorm or a hurricane, that those events are just canceled. And the student organizations do not get to have that money and then reimagine how they use it. That happened in the spring as well, right? You have a precedent set for that. The spring events were canceled. That money came back to SGA. Eventually, that money actually went back to students because you ended up giving a refund of the student activity fee. You weren't able to provide a service, and so you refunded part of your fee. You'll see on later on in your agenda, you have a conversation, a piece of legislation to talk about reducing your fee for the fall semester. So I think the same logic apply here and you have precedent for it, which I would encourage you to follow. The events have been canceled. And so that money, the precedent has been if the event is canceled by UMBC, the money comes back to the finance board. And like I said, you are having a conversation later in the meeting about reducing your fee for student organizations, or not for student organizations, for undergraduate students. And so the same, I think, logic applies. You're not able to provide a service, or you're not able to do a function, which is funding student organization events. And so students as a whole are being proposed to pay less for their student activity fee, which is where this money comes from. The second part of Joshua's question is around, okay, so but what kind of opportunities or funding do you then provide to student organizations who now are maybe thinking about different ways to engage with their members and with the campus community? And I would encourage you to think about what kind of funding could you set aside for that sort of ad hoc process, or in your ad hoc process, that student organizations could then tap into if they are doing something, if they're going to plan something new. And the decision, like, that's something else you have to think about, like, but those are it's my 2 cents on that.
So I have a question. If they wanted to have an event, would they have to do like a SAHAS, or what would be the new protocol for like a adjusted fall event, like made under COVID guidelines and stuff?
I just wanted to tell you, Sierra, Gloria, and let me check it. Yeah, they have questions in the
Yeah. Mershad, what was your question?
So
We'll get back to you, Acha. Actually,
Sure. My question is, it ties a little bit into what Acha asked as well. I'm just wondering about remote events and remote gatherings off campus. Would that still be funded? If an organization was planning to have like a remote event off campus?
I don't believe so. This is Tori, by the way. I don't think we're okay with using state dollars for off-campus things.
Well, regional meetups are going to be a thing at UMBC this semester. I know that the university is planning to have regional meetups for its students. So I was wondering if student organizations opted to have regional events, would that fall into it?
I don't know what that it is. What is that?
Regional meetups?
Yeah.
Oh, that's when like students from a region like meet up and like, do an event. While still following safety protocols that comes with COVID.
Yeah, I think the question is like, so those are organized by the university, and so then the university can enforce social distancing, and they can enforce masking, and they can set sort of the parameters. When you're funding an event, you as SGA are not enforcing anything, right? So if you were to fund something off campus, who is to make sure that the event that is using state dollars is not endangering students? Right? Who does that fall to? Ultimately, it would fall to you and then the university. And so I can't stress to you enough how paramount the health and safety of students is for me and for the university. And so, they have made a lot of really hard decisions around canceling events, around classes, around residential density, that the first question is around health and safety. I think that should be your guiding principle, my child is screaming. I think that should be your guiding principle. The health and safety of your students, the physical health and safety. And I think that when you are, if we are, this is my opinion, if I ask myself, right, you know, is funding an event for people to come together something that I want to do? Yes. Is that something I want you all to do? Yes. Is it something I want you all to do at the cost or risk of their health and safety? Absolutely not. So the question about, I think there's a difference between remote and virtual, right? I think that funding events that happen off campus where people come together can be problematic. I think funding events that are hosted virtually is a whole different story. Yeah.
And just to quickly add on to that, the messaging that I've been sharing with the student organizations that I've been meeting with is try to do it all virtually. Like, you know, as Candace was saying, the health of the members of your organization is the most important. And so if you can get ahead and start planning for a virtual experience for the fall semester, that's the best thing to do rather than trying to risk the health of the members that could be meeting up in a region. I just don't think that that's the most prudent thing to do during this time when there are still so many questions surrounding the coronavirus.
Sierra, Zach, and Gloria have questions. Just want to say.
Yeah. So Gloria, what was your question?
Okay, I think my question was kind of touched on by Candace, but I was wondering like if clubs had game nights or raffles online and they wanted to like offer incentives like an Amazon gift card that can be sent through email and stuff, would funding be like approved for those type of situations?
Typically, Candace, correct me if I'm wrong, the finance board precedents state that you don't fund giveaways, market it, like any gift cards, any giveaways, prizes, stuff like that. So that's in your guiding documents. I don't know where it is specifically. Candace is saying yes, but that's not something that is funded by finance board.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
That's correct. Yeah. Even on, you know, like a random Tuesday when we were on campus, if someone was like, we want to incentivize people to have a prize for our game night, finance board would say no, because there are rules and regulations around prizes, around giveaways, that the state has to sort of abide by, and the easiest sort of and fairest way to sort of manage that is to say, okay, we're just not going to do it.
So on the same point, I had a question to you, Candace. Considering the situation we are in, now that we're canceling all the in-person events, wouldn't it make sense for us to be able to provide such incentives for virtual events so that we can encourage the participation by students? Try and have that option for them open to connect with each other, even in the pandemic or like the time we were living in.
Sure. I mean, I think it would make sense. There are limitations that exist because of COVID. I'll give, you know, on day-to-day operations of the university, and that even extend to things like prizes, right? So typically anything that is ordered by, so first, look, we can't buy gift cards. We just can't because it's state money. That's my understanding. Tori, you correct me if I'm wrong. But that's what I'm pretty sure on it, but I don't know. Sometimes I think things and then they're like, no, Candace, you're wrong. But you know, the messaging I've received is like gift cards are not something that we sort of dip our toe in. The other thing is that the state has really strict guidelines about where things are delivered when they're ordered with state dollars. When things are ordered, they have to be delivered on campus to Commons 336 specifically, the third floor of the Commons. And so when they're using state dollars. And so if something were purchased on a purchasing card by the state for a student organization, it'd have to be delivered there. I think that, the conversation around like incentivizing people to come to things is an interesting conversation. I would also think that the incentive to coming to events and coming to be in community should be incentive of it in and of itself. Maybe that is naive of me. But I think people have a strong desire for a sense of community that is typically facilitated by being in person at UMBC. And if provided opportunities to come together in community with a student organization, that they would do that, even if there's not a chance to win a gift card. That's my philosophy, but again, not a voting member, so it doesn't really matter what I think.
I want to add on to that too. It's not just like we don't want to fund this. Like there's a lot of regulations around holding a game night, gaming licenses, prizes. There's a lot of stuff around that paperwork wise that even the departments have to go through, let alone with the student orgs. So technically, I mean, if student orgs want to be doing that, there's a lot of paperwork they have to fill out through SABSC they need gaming licenses if it's going to be like a trivia night with a prize for it too. And that's just something that the finance board doesn't dip their toes into. If that's something that the org wants to take on themselves, I don't even know if they're allowed to right now with SABSC. But like Candace said too, all of the ordering, if it's done from finance board, has to be done by David Royer and has to go to Commons, which no one is there to pick up anything.
Now, with all of that said, I'm going to ask the question again. I think we should, Tori, this for you and me, to go back to our sort of line and say, here's a question that was posed, given the current state of affairs, given the unique situation that we find ourselves in with student organizations, is this something that we can, have the sort of goalposts moved on this? Is there a different, is there more flexibility around this? Is there something I don't know? Am I misunderstanding something? Right. So, Gloria, what I can say to you is I'm going to ask about that and get more clarification on it. And I'm going to send you an email. Okay. She's still here?
Still here. I guess her mic isn't on. I can still see her here though.
All right, Acha, we're going to go back to you. So if you could restate your question, please.
I don't remember my question. I didn't write it down.
You asked about whether the money, if a student organization did want an allocation for something virtual, whether that money would be coming from Sahas.
That was my question. Like the method of how we would, clubs would have to come to us to request this money for
Right.
New events.
I think that like what we could do is we could like kind of tell them like if they don't know, because I don't know if everybody checks the emails, but like we send emails to the presidents of clubs and tell them what's happening, and then I feel like we kind of like, even though our budget will be cut, I think we'll kind of have like more than enough, because like a lot of it is changing virtually, and like I mean, like you probably can't, maybe I'm not being creative enough, but you probably can't do a lot from what I'm thinking of right now. So I think that if we like tell them what's happening, maybe we can offer them like some suggestions on how like we could coordinate or plan stuff for the fall, and then we could tell them that, like, you know, if you guys have like an event you want to hold virtually and you want to get like materials, I don't know what materials you would need, but like you need something, then they could like send us like a form, and then we can look over it and like we can decide whether or not we want to give them funding. And yeah.
What I was asking is like, is there already like a method that we have to for them to like do this, or are we just gonna have to like come up with it in a sense? Because I know that last year on the finance board, when people would need like additional funds, they would do the Sahas, but then I don't know if this would be considered under the Sahas request type thing.
I think that's something that you all will have to kind of talk about and decide on.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Audra?
Yeah, it does. Thank you, Tori.
Okay. All right. Zachary, what was your question?
First, if you don't mind me saying, I'd just like to say Aaliyah articulated my point better than I would have, in that like a bigger conversation needs to be had about incentivizing and trying to get students to come to these online events, because going off of Candace's philosophy, you know, that it's not going to happen with gift cards and other things like that. And you know, in my opinion as well, it shouldn't. And next semester is going to look a lot different than previous, because we're not going to be incentivizing with food. It's going to look a lot different now that people can just walk to their kitchen, get food, and then come to these events. So I definitely agree with Aaliyah that, you know, a bigger conversation about how we need to think outside the box in order to bring students to events and stuff like that, whether it be contacting presidents and giving them guidelines and stuff like that. It's going to take a lot of work. My question is geared towards Candace, and just clarifying what you said, talking to you specifically, what you said about the blanket statement from the university that, you know, no student org events will be happening on campus, and of course regionally, as we've already clarified. So is that, like, just to clarify, true, like nothing is going to be like happening in groups on campus? Because with our oh, if you don't mind, sorry,
go ahead.
with Mershad and I's meetings with Dr. Young, we've had a few discussions here and there, of course not set in stone, about outside events and, you know, having tents and just the hypotheticals of if that could happen. So I'm hearing that, well, if the university can hold these events outside and on the field, on Erickson Field and stuff like that, is that opportunity going to be, how do I say this, you know, given to student orgs as well, of course, with the right amount of supervision? And I'm assuming that there's going to be more supervision if that's allowed. If you can just clarify that point, I would appreciate it.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, so like I said, you know, there are those regional events that are happening. There will be things happening on campus, but they are going to be supervised by UMBC staff. And social distancing and masking and density, that's going to be something that has to be enforced by someone, right? So it will fall to staff members at some point, I'm guessing, right? I think the question becomes, if you do fund student organization events that are happening on campus, who enforces those rules? And if there's a cost to it, because you have to hire student marshals or you have to hire staff to come and be at those events, then that cost is then passed on to the finance board. And so something that may have been, we want to have a pizza party and a movie on the lawn, which on paper could cost, you know, you rent the movie for $500. You have, you know, the pizza, you order 20 pizzas at $7 a pop. That's, you know, $140. So that's a $750 event, right? the cost to it becomes different when you have to add staffing, when you have to make sure that they're social distancing. What if someone shows up
Absolutely.
without a mask? I mean, I think and then whose responsibility is it? Right? Is
I
it
understand you
is it
completely.
is it SGA's responsibility?
Right. And that's the question that I have. Is that our responsibility to find those people, and do faculty and admin,
Yeah.
are they having conversations and
Yeah.
how they can support students, or as you use the term, is it just a blanket statement, as as you've previously described, we don't want to deal with this, or the regulations and what it would take to deal with this outweighs the benefit, and it would be more it would be more cost effective and time effective to just move everything online and just have us deal with that for let's say hopefully a semester. I can understand how much we're asking for, and saying that, like, by springtime there's a bigger possibility of us opening it up, and let's just how do I say this? Let's just take the beating for fall semester, for lack of better terms, and just go without in-person events. Is that kind of like, if you would say, of course I'm saying it in a much harsher way, but
Yeah.
if you would say the attitude of faculty and staff of just kind of like putting it on the side, saying, hey, fall semester is kind of going to be wonky, so we're going to have everything online and absolutely nothing. I'm just curious. And also, if any conversations are being had about how admin and faculty can support us in that way, and answering the question of you, as you've stated, of who determines who's responsible, what jobs, etc.
Right. I mean, I think so I want to be careful. Like, I want to make sure that people are clear on where I stand on things. Like, and also, like, I am not the sayer, right, of what happens on campus. My personal opinion is that the health and safety of students should be paramount, and I think that is also the opinion of the I know that's the opinion of the university, and so the decisions around what gets to happen on campus are made by people that are not me, right? And the messaging that I have received is, like I said, is it mission critical? And can it happen online?
Right. And at the end of the day, I think it's like, no student org is necessarily mission critical. Like, you can make the argument that every student org is mission critical, and absolutely the opposite way, that every student org isn't mission critical. So it's a very weird line to kind of draw.
And I think even before, I think the sort of place where you all would need to stand in terms of funding an on-campus event for student organizations is whether or not it got approved to happen by the university. If the university approved the event to happen, I think you could then consider funding it.
It's a fair, like, linear and logical, steps of moving.
Yes.
I think it's kind of important that we are focusing on what we already know. What we already know is that all student org events are canceled for the fall. Like, that has been decided by Events and Conference Services, and that was sent out to all of them. So I think it's kind of important to kind of move forward with this meeting on, like, what we already know, instead of hypotheticals until they become reality.
Excellent point.
I agree with you. Candace, I appreciate it.
With that, are there any other questions, comments, concerns regarding this issue?
Yeah, I have two things. In my head, like, I'm getting a little scatterbrained because it seems like our conversation is jumping over. So I do want to go back to what Acha raised of, like, what pot are we going to be working out of? And I think the answer is yes to that. We're going to be working out of the Sahas pot. But I think something for everyone to consider when we get down later to the conversation of reducing the student activity fee is, how much money do we think we will need in that pot to actually serve the needs of student organizations as requests do come in? Because I really do believe that student organizations are going to get very creative, and they're going to have lectures, and they're going to have presentations, and they're going to find ways to still operationalize the mission statement that they have. So we have to consider how much are we going to set aside in Sahas to support them in whatever those endeavors look like. And then also, you know, my second point jumps off of that of, I think that a critical part of this entire process is going to be making sure that the liaison system is still up and running. The conversation of incentivizing student organizations was made, and I honestly don't think that there's a way to incentivize student organizations by giving them a gift, giving them cards to give out or whatever. But I think the way that we actually can activate student organizations and quote unquote incentivize them is by sitting down, having those conversations with them and saying that it is possible for you still to be active, and it is possible for you still to do programs, and to still live out, even in this virtual world, the mission statement that you have. And so that's another point that I would like to raise, that like we also need to invest in liaison system and helping to make sure that the finance board is there to support student organizations as we transition to this more difficult time with a lot of questions.
I think that is a very good point on your end, Joshua, about the liaison system, because when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, we are here for students. And I think it's very important that we act as that crutch, especially in these difficult times. Acha, I saw you unmute. Did you have something to add?
No, I was going to agree as well, but I wanted to know when we'll start the process of allocating different orgs to the representatives. Or has it already been done?
Candace?
That is on the to-do list for me to talk with Aaliyah about. Hey. But I can say, and that's something you'll know sooner rather than later. I'm going to talk with Aaliyah. I think we could do it in 2 weeks, if not less.
Also, another question. You guys, it's gonna be like just you two guys divvying up all the orgs for everyone, or is it gonna be like discussion?
That typically falls to the assistant vice chair, or to the vice chair. Sorry, the assistant vice chair is not a thing. It typically falls to the vice chair to make assignments. But if there's an org that you're like, I shouldn't work with them, or I do want to work with this org, I don't think that that's something that Aaliyah can accommodate. I'm sorry, I'm speaking for you, Aaliyah. She's like, I don't care. But yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any more questions? So do we want to move on to a brainstorming aspect of discussion, or do we want to move to end discussion?
What do you mean by brainstorm? Like what aspect of brainstorming?
I guess, I mean, we kind of covered it in questions, but just going over maybe some basic ideas of how we can move on for fall, unless you want to save that for another time, because we do have other stuff to get to on the agenda.
I think we should like save that, because I feel like since this is something like kind of you have to think about a little bit, like maybe if we all like kind of try to think of something and then for the next meeting we can discuss. I think that would be a good idea.
Joshua?
Yeah, I was going to agree. I moved to discussion because I think that, you know, when we talk about reducing the student activity fee, that's when we can have more of a conversation around what money do we want to reserve for student organizations, and that's the main conversation point that I can think of.
Okay. So is there a motion to end discussion?
I move to end discussion.
I second.
Any objections? By general consent, we are ending discussion on fall allocations. And we will move on to the legislation. Gonna go back to sharing my screen. Mershad, since it is your legislation, would you like to introduce your pieces of legislation?
Sure thing. So this is strategic plan revisited for the 100th time. I think this time around the steering committee, we worked together. We put in a lot of thought to it. I'm sure. I don't know if you guys looked at it or not, but we finalized the strategic plan at the steering committee, and this is basically just reintroducing it to finance board.
Okay, so is there a motion to enter discussion on JL 03-2021?
I move to enter discussion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, so are there any questions about this? I know that last time we basically looked at the same piece of legislation. This is just the updated version after going through steering committee and all that.
Sierra, would we be able to put on the screen and you just like stroll through it really quickly to make sure that everyone?
The strategic plan?
Yeah.
Okay. I gotta get this bar off my screen.
I think Candace has a point of order.
A point of order. I just want to make sure that people are waiting to be recognized by Sierra, and waiting to have her call on you as your vice or as your chair. And if you do have something to say, please make sure you're putting that in the chat, like, next or me, so that she can maintain a clear flow of conversation.
Yes, please say something like me or yes, Mershad.
If you don't mind adding a date of introduction, I just wasn't sure when the first finance board meeting was going to be. So.
Okay. I have too much stuff on my screen. Sorry about that. Wait, is it going to be in the guiding documents? Mershad?
I think so.
Okay.
I can share with you. I think you already should have access to it, but
Okay. I'm gonna go to docs. Sorry about this. All right, everyone can see this, correct? Please, if you have any questions, put me in the chat so that we can discuss them. Also to mention this last section 7, Joshua, Kai, and I, sorry about the dogs. Joshua, Kai, and I worked on it all last week, and we introduced it to the steering committee to be added as a new section. So if you have any questions about that, please let us know. But other than that, I am so sorry. Are there any questions about the legislation or the strategic plan? Okay, nobody is saying anything, so is there a motion to vote?
Oh,
Candace?
I would encourage you to look through the strategic plan section by section and see if there's anything that you have a question about. That would be my advice before you vote on it.
Sorry about my dogs again. So we're going to go back to the strategic plan. We're going to go up to section 1. Would you like me to read it off to you, or are we good with reading it by ourselves? Aaliyah, I saw you in the chat.
I don't know if everybody has read this yet, but because this is 10 pages long, and like you kind of have to like digest it, I don't know, maybe we should move to voting because like for us to go through all of this, I don't know if everybody would be able to like properly like look at it, and everybody reads at different speeds and stuff. And I don't see a lot of people on the document, it's just me and you. So maybe if we like move to vote on this another time and then like move on the agenda. That's my suggestion.
Joshua?
I will say that I think that, well, my hope is that everyone had the opportunity to read it, just because it was on the agenda. So that's just something that we all should have prepared. So I think a better course of action is if you did not read it, then maybe you should say that you need more time. But I think for us to push the vote back would be just belaboring this even beyond what it already has been. I think that, if we're going to try to operationalize the strategic plan, it's kind of unfair to keep pushing it back and then having to reschedule a meeting. But I definitely understand the concern, but I think that, finding another way to remedy the issue of anyone not having laid eyes on this document may be better. And again, my hope is that everyone did read it.
So based off of Joshua's suggestion, if you could leave something in the chat saying if you need more time. During that, I'll let Mershad speak because he asked to in the chat.
Just a quick point, just like any other guiding document, you could propose amendments to the strategic plan whenever during the semester. So I just want to make that known. If there's a point on that you don't agree with, you can propose an amendment at any time and we will get on, trying to fix that.
Also, let me know if I'm scrolling too fast, but Pooja, yes.
So I kind of agree with Joshua's point. Like most of us should have read this, and I think that's why we should just move on to the wording part and focus on the other aspects of the agenda.
Okay, so with that, is everyone comfortable with moving on to voting? So is there a motion? Aaliyah has a motion in the chat. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay.
Second.
This is the correct one. Okay. So we are now going to vote for JL 3-2021, the confirmation of the organization's strategic plan. Mershad?
So I think Aaliyah has to say that I move to approve JL 03-2021, and then someone has to second.
I move to approve JL 03-2021.
Second.
And now we will vote on it. Or actually, are there any objections? There are no objections, so by general consent, we are moving to approve JL 03-2021. The voting will commence in the chat. So if you're for, please write aye. If you're not, or if you're against, sorry, please write no. So members for. Members opposed. One abstaining. Two not present. I don't think Siri or Victor is here. Yeah, okay. And with that, we have passed this legislation. Is there anything else regarding this document, Candace, that we should look at?
Who's abstaining?
Me.
Okay. And then Liam and who else is absent?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Siri's not here, I don't believe.
You have 9
Victor isn't
because you have
here.
you have 9 members, and Liam's not here.
Sorry, I cannot do
That's
math.
okay. It's okay. 5 and 5 and 9. Yeah, okay, you're fine.
Rashad's having a victory dance. All right. Now we can move on to JL 04-2021. Rashad, would you like to introduce this?
Sure. This is basically the same thing as the amendment that was introduced last time. The only change that it's made to this is that instead of the SGA president having the sole responsibility of drafting and passing it, they would do it with assistance of the summer steering committee.
Yeah, down here in the red. So is there a motion to enter discussion on JL-04-21?
I move to approve. I move to approve JL 04-2021.
That was a motion to approve the document. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. I see no objections. Everyone is asking to skip discussion. So are there any objections? All right, so by general consent, we are going to move to voting on JL 04-2021. So all members for? All members against? That would be no one else, so 1 abstaining and then 3 not present. And that means this legislation has been passed. And we are all good here. So now we can move on to JL 05-2021. Rashad, would you like to introduce this one?
Sure thing. So this is basically what we were all referring to. So this is a joint legislation to only charge 50% of the student activity fee this semester. This will be only for the fall semester. And I can speak a little bit more to that on how that was going to look like. So it's a proposed $250,000 cut to our annual budget, something around that ballpark. With that being said, we would have to, you know, redo budgets and stuff like that. But I just don't think it's fair to charge the students for the full activity fee when it comes to, you know, not having any events on campus and stuff like that. And this was a decision that was made by the steering committee. But again, I do want to hear more about what you guys have in mind and stuff like that.
Is there a motion to enter discussion?
I move to enter discussion regarding JL 05-221.
Second.
Okay, we are now entering, or any objections? No one consent, we are entering a period of discussion on JL 05-2021. Pooja.
So I want to know, how did you guys come up with this percentage, 50%? Did you like refer to the past budgets and looked at how much amount we spent on the things that we would need for in-person events and deducted that amount and like kind of came, like, how did you guys come up with the percentage? I just want to know, like, how did you come up with the 50% deduction?
I can speak a little bit more onto that, and Josh and Candace could hop on if I miss out on anything. So this decision was, so last semester, SGA gave back a portion of the student activity fee, right? Just because, you know, we weren't on campus for the whole time and stuff like that. I think it was 50%, Candace, if I'm not wrong. Did we give back 50%?
I'll get the exact number. I have it in an email.
Okay, perfect. So when it comes to reduction of these fees, you would have to look at GSA and everything else, because they're reducing their fee to 75%, but they also have a lot of, you know, different things that they do with their fee that's not the same as us. Like, for example, they provide educational grants to graduate students and stuff like that, but it's not, you know, the same as SGA. It's advised that we stay in line with them, but at the same time, with us having no events on campus, there's going to be a large sum of money that we're not going to be tapping into, right? So that was the reasoning behind why we chose to do 50%. And in case that, you know, we do need that money, we do have some money in the reserves that we could tap into to save us, if that makes any sense. Did I answer your question pretty well? If not.
No, yeah, you did. It does make sense. But like, 50% to me, when you're not having any in-person events, it's just a little bit more. Like, can we reduce it a bit more? And that's why I asked, like, how did you guys come up with the numbers? Did you refer to the budgets and on base of that you came up with the numbers, or was it just like, I don't know, like estimation? Like you just said, let's go with 50% and keep the rest 50% for the reserves.
Sure. So we're still actually spending a lot of money, right? So stipends is a lot of money that we're going into. We still have to pay salaries for people that work for SGA. You know, like Candace, a lot of other money. So there's a lot of other avenues that SGA money goes into. It's not just student organizations, right? And you know, we still have the stipends, we still have programming on our own end, we still have to fund the Retriever and SCB and other target organizations. So there's a lot of money that we're still going to need, but you know, it's just been reduced.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Of course.
Joshua.
Yeah, in line with what I just said, I think that an important point to make and emphasize and lift up is that, you know, SGA, we're still going to be working. We're still going to have operations. We're still going to try push out programming. We're still going to have our executive branch. Like, SGA is still going to be doing all that it possibly can to support students during this time. So that's why, and you know, Pooja, I had the same question of, well, why not reduce it to 75%? And I spoke with Rashad and Zach and Syria about that. We're still going to try to make sure that we are as active as possible to support the students. And so that's why we do need that money to make sure that we have the financial backing to do just that. And I think that more than ever before is going to be important to make sure that we're present in whatever spaces we possibly can be present in. So I just wanted to fill in a gap of, like, that's another reason why we do need the money, because we're still going to be active, we're still going to be working to have students.
Yeah, it makes sense. Thanks, Joshua.
Are there any other question, comments, discussion points on this document? All right. So is there a motion to end discussion?
Actually, I do have a question.
Go ahead.
So, regarding other fees that students have to pay, where would you have, like, what are the, are there any talks of like reducing that, or is because this like has directly to do with SGA, is that why we have like the power to reduce it?
So there's actually a lot of university fees that are being reduced right now. The student activity fee is one of the only fees that are being charged in some capacity or what. I know the transportation fee is being reduced, the parking fee is being reduced. There's a lot of fees that are being reduced. And just to stay in line with the rest of the fees that are being reduced, that's why we're reducing the student activity fee.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, concerns, comments? Rickmon.
So the chartered organizations that STA funds, like the Retriever and SCB. So other than stipends, what else, is the funding going to?
So, for example, for SCB, a lot of that goes to programming. Like, for example, Quad Mania, that takes a lot of money. Or when I know last year they had two artists and SGA provided a lot of money for that. In terms of the Retriever, I know they need a lot of money to print, press, and put out their newspaper and stuff like that. So that's where the money is going. Besides the stipend of the positions that they already have.
No, but for the fall semester, since most of everything is either virtual or remote, where's that funding going? Other than stipends, of course, not for the spring semester.
Sure. So I know that SCB and the Retriever are going to be working in, the same capacity and not. They're going to be still doing the same things, right? Anjali could speak a little bit more about, if she's still here, she could still a little bit more about what the Retriever is planning to do with that money. But I'm assuming it's going to be the same business as usual.
You want me to talk about like what the Retriever has planned? Well, that's actually a difficult question to answer. We're still waiting to have our like budget meeting. The Retriever is hoping to have like similar expenses. We're cutting down our print. Kind of obviously that would happen because there are very few people on campus and we don't want to be accidentally, I don't know, spreading coronavirus by people picking up our papers. But for the most part, everything is remaining the same. But we are waiting to hear more from, I think it's David. I don't know. This is my first year, so I'm still learning. But we still need to have our budgetary meeting and figure out like what our budget will look like. I hope that gives a little bit more insight.
Thank you for speaking, Anjali. Candace?
I forgot what I was going to say. But hold on. SCB is doing things because there are going to be residential students on campus, right? So they will be doing some things socially distanced. There'll be staff there. And then the cost for things to, there will be costs to things, even if they are done virtually, or even if they are done, they're done differently, right? Like, yes, for the Retriever, there is a cost associated to printing papers, but that's not their only cost. And the majority of their overhead probably is staff salaries, and the same goes for SCB. While they may not be doing movie nights and bingo nights all like they have been doing, there will be costs to figuring out how to virtually engage students. There's lots and lots and lots of vendors who offer services to who are offering services to colleges to say, we can help you host a virtual bingo night, or we can help you host a virtual trivia night, or, you know, here, come use our software or our application to do X, Y, or Z. So I think the costs shift in some ways. Yeah, I don't know if that makes any sense, but
Pooja?
Actually, Candace answered that question pretty well. So yeah, I don't have any questions.
Anjali?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, yeah, the retriever, much of the, I mean, you can like look at the budget, but like much of it, the breakdown, we have to keep paying our staff members and we're still hiring people and we want to make sure that we're still getting news. And it's almost more important now because like most people will not be on campus. So yeah, I mean, I understand 50%, like maybe there's some opportunity to cut somewhere, but I don't think it's wise, especially because students still need a lot of the services that the chartered orgs provide.
Are there any other questions? I'm not seeing anything in the chat, so if there is a motion to end discussion.
I move to end this period of discussion.
Is there a second? Okay. And with any objections? Okay, I hear no objections, so with general consent, we're ending this period of discussion on JL 05-2021. Is there a motion to approve JL 05-2021?
I move to approve JL of 2021.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. All members for? What was that? All right. All members opposed? What did I do? Are we missing someone?
Rahman didn't vote.
Are you abstaining, Rahman? Oh, okay. And then 3 not present. And with that, this legislation is passed. And I think that concludes everything on our agenda. I should stop recording, right? No? Okay. So does anyone have any announcements?
Wait, sorry.
Go ahead, Joshua.
Okay. I have one. So I'm helping to coordinate the Changemakers dinner with the Center for Democracy and Civic Life. They should have sent some information out about it. But if anyone wants to attend that, I think it would be an awesome opportunity to kind of talk about structural racism and see what's going on in our community. And we have guest speakers like Bill Turner, who's the equity officer for the police department in Baltimore City. Brendan Scott will be in attendance, and some others. So I think it's a really good opportunity to just hear some of the change makers doing great things in our community. And the second thing, tomorrow is the town. And I think that it's very, very important for all of us to be at least well read on that conversation and see what's happening to our students so that we can find some way to support them, even though it may not necessarily be in our job description. It's the role of every SGA officer, in my opinion, to support the entire student body. So I think attending that is going to be very, very special.
Yeah, in the chat, that forum, wow, my brain just completely blanked. It's at 4 p.m. tomorrow. So just keep that on your radar. Any other announcements? Candace?
I'm going to be doing a second wave of outreach to people to meet with them, just like one-on-one, get to know them, talk with you. For those of you who have already met with me, thank you very much. For those of you who I see or who see me more often than they would care to admit, sorry. But yeah, just be on the lookout for an email from me asking if you want to do a coffee talk. So there you go.
Any other announcements? Wow, sorry. Any other announcements? Because I have something. Acha, your answer is in the chat. The dinner is July 28th, 6 to 8. Real quick, as an organization, the SGA will be doing a fall retreat. It's August 19th through the 21st. I just wanted to let you know that we will be sending out some documents for you, or things to look at by yourself. So I just wanted to put that on your radar. That might be coming out at the end of this month, beginning of July. So I just wanted to let you all know that that was happening. Any other announcements? Candace?
Yes, and if people were wondering, the retreat is virtual. Yes, we will not be meeting in person, but you also will not be on a computer screen for 8 hours every day on those 3 days. There's that.
Thank you, Candace. I don't see anyone asking for any more announcements in the chat, so we will move on to adjournment. Oh, Pooja, she said that it won't be all, we will be online, but you won't be stuck behind a computer screen all day, basically. So we're not going to have you 8 hours doing constant stuff on a computer screen. All right. For the final roll call, I recognize that Aliyah is present, Joshua is present, and Ancha is present. Pooja is present, Rahman is present, as well as ex officio members Candace, Marshad, Zachary, and Tori, as well as the Retriever and Gloria. I adjourn this meeting. That is a lie. I'm going to stop recording now so we can do Pass the Gavel. I'm going to stop sharing my screen.